I buried my brother 42 years ago. His name was Thomas, Tommy as we called him. He was 19 when the Greyhound bus he was on went off the Coquihalla Highway during a January snowstorm in 1983. They said 17 passengers died that night. Tommy was one of them. I identified his body at the morgue in Hope, British Columbia. I was 23 and it fell on me to tell our mother that her youngest son was gone. Last Tuesday at 2 a.m. my phone rang. The caller ID showed a number I didn't know, but the area code was 604, Vancouver. I almost ignored it. At 65, you learn that calls at that hour rarely bring good news. Still, something made me answer, maybe the same instinct that used to wake me when Tommy had nightmares as a boy. David? Is this David? A voice asked. I sat up in bed, my heart pounding. The voice was unsteady, like someone who hadn't spoken in years. Beneath that roughness, though, was something that froze my blood. Who is this? I asked. There was heavy breathing on the line. It's me, the voice said. It's Tommy. I dropped the phone. My hands trembled as I picked it up again. The line was still open. I could hear him breathing. This isn't funny, I said. Whoever you are, this is cruel. My brother died 42 years ago. I know, he replied. I know how long it's been. I just figured out who I am. I found something. A newspaper clipping about a bus crash. There's a photo of me, but the name under it says Thomas Carr. That's me, isn't it? The room spun. Where are you? I managed to ask. I'm not sure, he said. Someplace called the downtown East Side. I think I live in a shelter on East Hastings Street. I've been here a long time. I don't remember how I got here or anything before about 15 years ago. I just woke up in a hospital one day. They said I'd been found on the street without ID and couldn't tell them my name. My thoughts raced. It couldn't be true. It had to be some sort of trick. What do you remember? I asked carefully. Nothing clear, he said. Sometimes I dream about snow and people screaming. Sometimes I see a house with a blue door. Someone there made pancakes with blueberries every Sunday. The tears came fast then. I remembered that house, that blue door, and our mother making those pancakes every Sunday. Tommy always ate more than anyone else. What do you look like now? I whispered. Old, he said quietly. Really old. My face is weathered. I've lived rough, but when I saw that photo, I recognized myself. We have the same eyes. Tommy had a scar, I said, on his left forearm from falling off his bike when he was 7. 12 stitches. There was a pause. I have a scar there, he said. Old. I never knew where it came from. I broke down then, crying harder than I had since the day we buried him. Give me your address, I said. I'm coming to get you. I don't think you should, he said softly. I'm not who you remember. I don't remember being him. I've lived on the streets too long. I probably look terrible. I just wanted someone to know. Maybe I didn't die in that crash. Maybe there was a mistake. Tell me where you are, I said firmly. Right now. He gave me the address of a shelter on East Hastings. I wrote it down with shaking hands. It was a 7-hour drive from Kelowna to Vancouver, longer if the roads were bad. I looked at the clock, 2:15 a.m. Stay there, I said. Don't move. I'm leaving now. I'll be there by noon. Okay, he said quietly. Okay, David. I'll wait. The line went dead. I sat in the dark for half a minute, trying to process what had just happened. Then I was moving, pulling on clothes, grabbing my wallet and keys. My wife, Sarah, stirred. David, what's wrong? She asked. I have to go to Vancouver, I said. My voice sounded detached, like it wasn't mine. Now? At 2 in the morning? What happened? I looked at her, my wife of 38 years, and couldn't find the words. How do you tell someone that the brother you buried 4 decades ago just called you? I'll explain later, I said. I have to go. I'm sorry. I left before she could ask more. The drive to Vancouver was the longest 7 hours of my life. I kept the radio off. I couldn't bear the noise. My thoughts were chaos. Part of me certain this was a hoax, part of me desperate to believe it was real. I thought back to that day at the morgue. I was 23, barely an adult. They'd shown me a body, battered, swollen from the crash, frozen for hours before recovery. There was a gash across the forehead and bruises everywhere. But I'd looked at the face, the hair, the build, and said, yes, that's my brother, Thomas Carr. But what if I'd been wrong? What if, in my shock and grief, I had identified the wrong body? The thought made me feel sick. If it were true, it meant Tommy had been alive all this time, alive, suffering, and alone, unaware of who he was. While I built a life, married Sarah, raised children, built a career, and celebrated countless birthdays and holidays, he'd been lost somewhere, surviving in the shadows. Our mother had passed away 10 years ago, still mourning her youngest son. I pressed harder on the accelerator. I reached Vancouver around 11:30 a.m. The downtown east side was worse than I'd imagined. Boarded up buildings, people slumped in doorways, used needles scattered on the sidewalks. This was where my brother had been living. The shelter on East Hastings was a low gray structure that looked older than time. The front door was unlocked. Inside, it smelled like strong disinfectant struggling to cover the odor of too many people in too little space. A woman sat behind a desk near the entrance. She looked up as I approached. "Can I help you?" she asked. "I'm looking for someone," I said. He might not remember his name, but he called me early this morning, around 2, said he's been staying here. She studied me for a moment, then nodded. "Tommy? Yeah, I remember. He was pretty shaken up, said it was an emergency. Sweet man. He's been coming here off and on for about 8 years. Keeps to himself mostly." "Is he here now?" I asked. "Check the common room. Through there," she said, pointing to a door on the left. My heart pounded as I walked toward it. The common room was large, filled with mismatched chairs and tables, a small television playing softly in one corner. About a dozen people sat scattered around. Most looked up briefly, wary and distant. Then I saw him. He sat alone at a table near the window, his back to me. His gray hair, longer than it should have been, was tied back in a ponytail. His flannel shirt was worn thin, his shoulders slightly hunched as if he were trying to disappear. I walked closer, my legs unsteady. "Tommy," I said quietly. He turned. The face that met mine was not the one I remembered. This man's face was lined and rough, marked by years of hard living. His skin was tanned from exposure, and a faint scar crossed his left cheek. He looked closer to 70 than 61. But his eyes, brown with flecks of gold, just like our father's, were unmistakable. "David," he said, his voice cracking. I couldn't speak. I just stood there, staring at him. This man who might be my brother, this ghost I thought gone forever. He stood slowly, his movements stiff, his body thinner and smaller than Tommy's had been, though maybe it was just the way he carried himself. Still, there was something in his expression that stopped me cold. "You came," he said quietly. "I wasn't sure you would." "Show me your arm," I said, my voice more forceful than I meant. "The left one." He hesitated, then rolled up his sleeve. There on his forearm was a faded scar about 4 inches long, exactly where Tommy's had been. My knees went weak. I grabbed the table to steady myself. "I need to sit down," I said. He pulled out a chair for me, and I sat heavily. He lowered himself into the seat across from me, studying me carefully as if afraid I might leave. "Tell me about the bus crash," I said. "What do you remember?" He took a deep breath. "Not the crash itself, but I have dreams, always the same. I'm on a bus in the snow. The driver is trying to slow down, but we're sliding. People are screaming. It's freezing, so cold I think I'll die. And then nothing, just darkness for a long time." He rubbed his face with both hands. "Next thing I remember, I woke up in a hospital. A nurse said I'd been found on the street unconscious. They told me I'd been beaten and robbed, but I couldn't remember it. I couldn't remember anything, not my name, not where I was from. They kept me for 3 days, ran tests, said I had old head injuries, maybe from years before." "What year was that?" I asked. 2010, he said. "February, I think. I didn't even know what year it was. I had to ask." My mind was spinning. 2010, 15 years after the crash. What had happened during those missing years? "And before that," I pressed, "you really remember nothing?" "Just flashes," he said. "Bits that don't fit together. I remember being cold, maybe living in the mountains, working jobs that paid cash, construction maybe. But it's all hazy, like trying to remember a dream." He looked down at his hands, scarred, calloused hands that had clearly done years of hard labor. "For a long time, I didn't even try to remember," he said quietly. "I just survived. Shelters when I could, outside when I couldn't. Even now there are gaps, whole weeks I can't account for. Doctors at the free clinics said it might be dissociative disorder from trauma." "When did you start trying to remember?" I asked. "About 6 months ago," he said. A volunteer at the shelter was sorting old newspapers for recycling. She showed me one from January 1983 and said, "Can you believe this was 40 years ago?" Something about that date, it hit me, like it meant something. He reached into his pocket and carefully unfolded a yellow newspaper clipping. He unfolded the paper carefully, as if afraid it might crumble, and slid it across the table. It was a front-page article about the bus crash. The headline read, "17 Dead in Highway Disaster." In a grid of small photos showing the victims, I saw Tommy's face, young, smiling, his high school graduation photo, the one Mom had given to the paper. "I looked at that picture for a long time," he said. "Something clicked. I recognized that face. Not from the mirror. I don't look like that anymore, but from somewhere deep inside. The name under it said Thomas Carr. I kept repeating it, Thomas Tommy, and it felt right. It felt like me." I stared at the clipping, at my brother's young face smiling back. "I started looking for more information," he went on. "There's a library nearby. The librarian helped me search old records. I found the obituary, the list of survivors and family members. Your name was there. David Carr, brother, and an address in Kelowna. It took me 3 months to work up the courage to call. I didn't know if you'd still be there or if you'd even believe me." "I'm not sure I do," I said, the words coming out sharper than I intended. "Because if you're Tommy, that means I identified the wrong bong body. I told our mother her son was dead. Do you understand what that means?" He flinched, but nodded. "I'm sorry," he said quietly. "I can't imagine what this is like for you." "Mom's dead?" I said, my voice breaking. "She died 10 years ago, still grieving you. She never got over it. And if you really are Tommy, she died not knowing you were alive." Tears streamed down my face, and I didn't care who saw. The man across from me, Tommy, maybe Tommy, was crying too, silent tears on his weathered skin. "I'm sorry," he whispered again. "I'm so sorry." We sat there in the shelter's common room, 2 old men crying while others passed by pretending not to see. Eventually, I wiped my face and looked at him. Really looked. "We need to do a DNA test," I said. "That's the only way to know." He nodded. "Yes, I want that too. I need to know." I pulled out my phone and searched. There was a private lab downtown that offered same-day DNA testing. Expensive, but they promised results in 48 hours. I called and made an appointment for 3 that afternoon. "Come on," I said, standing up. "Let's get this done." He rose slowly, his movements stiff. As we left the shelter, I noticed how much shorter he seemed now. Tommy had once been nearly my height, but this man was at least 3 inches shorter. Years of malnutrition and hardship could do that. We drove to the lab in silence. I kept glancing at him, trying to find traces of my brother in his face. Sometimes I saw it, the curve of his ear, the way he rubbed his thumb against his fingers when nervous, a habit Tommy always had. Other times, he looked like a stranger. The DNA test was simple. Cheek swabs, paperwork, payment. The technician said they'd call with results in 48 hours. Outside, I realized I hadn't thought about what came next. "Where are you staying tonight?" I asked. "The shelter, I guess," he said. I looked at him, this man in worn clothes and broken shoes, and couldn't bring myself to leave him there. "Come on," I said. "I'm getting a hotel room. You're staying with me." "You don't have to do that," he said. "I know," I replied. "Come on." I found a hotel near Stanley Park and got a room with 2 beds. The desk clerk glanced between us, me in clean clothes, him looking rough. But I didn't care. I paid cash and took the key. In the room, I ordered pizza while he showered. He was in there nearly 45 minutes. When he came out, his hair was clean and slicked back, his beard shaved away. For the first time, I could really see it, the familiar shape of his face, the set of his jaw, Tommy's jaw. We ate in near silence, the TV murmuring in the background. Finally he spoke. "Thank you," he said, "for this, for not giving up on me, or at least believing enough to try." "I haven't decided what I believe yet," I said, "but I need to know." He nodded slowly. "Can I ask something?" "Sure." "What was I like before, when I was Tommy?" The question hit me hard. I set down my pizza and leaned back. "You were good," I said after a moment. "Really good. Kind. You brought home stray cats, cried when you saw roadkill. You wanted to be a veterinarian. You were going to college in Vancouver that fall. You were so excited." Tears filled his eyes. I went on. "You were funny too. Always made Mom laugh, even on her worst days. And you were brave. When Dad left, you told me we'd be okay, that we'd take care of her together, and we did. I wish I could remember, he said softly. I wish I could remember being that person. Maybe you will, I said. Maybe once you know for sure who you are, it'll come back. But I wasn't sure I believed it. That night, I lay awake listening to him breathe steadily in the next bed, the sound of someone finally sleeping safely. I thought about calling Sarah, but didn't know how to explain any of it over the phone. Instead, I sent a text. I'm okay. I'll explain everything when I get home. She replied right away. I love you. I love you too, I texted back. Be safe. The next day, we barely spoke. We had breakfast at a diner, and I watched him eat like it was his first real meal in months, which it probably was. Afterward, we walked through Stanley Park. It felt important to keep moving rather than wait in the hotel for the call. As we walked, he shared more about his life, years spent on the streets, nights in shelters, the people he'd met, and the winters that nearly took his life. He told me about taking odd jobs for cash, being robbed, beaten, arrested for loitering, and living with a constant fog in his mind, a feeling of being lost. I always felt like I was waiting for something, he said quietly as we stood looking over the water, like I had somewhere I needed to be, but I couldn't remember where. The call came at 2:30 that Thursday afternoon. We were back in the hotel room. I had planned to leave earlier, but decided to stay until we got the results. I answered on the second ring. Hello, Mr. Carr, this is Sarah Chen from the Vancouver DNA lab. I'm calling with your results. My hand shook as I held the phone. The man on the bed, Tommy, or maybe Tommy, watched me closely. Yes, this is David Carr, I said. The probability of siblingship between you and the second party is 99.97%, she said. You are biological brothers. The room spun. I sat heavily on the bed. You're certain? I asked, even though I already knew. Yes, sir. These results are conclusive. I gave her my email, thanked her, and hung up. I looked at the man across from me, my brother, the one I thought I buried 42 years ago. It's you, I said. You're really Tommy. He let out a sound halfway between a laugh and a sob. I'm Tommy, he said softly. I'm Thomas Carr. Then we both cried again. This time I crossed the room and hugged him. He felt frail, but he was real, alive. We held on for a long time. When we finally pulled apart, I said, we need to understand what happened, how you survived, where you've been. I know someone who might help, Tommy said. A doctor at the free clinic, Dr. Patricia Walsh. She's been helping me. She might have answers. We met Dr. Walsh that afternoon. She was in her 50s, calm and attentive, the kind of doctor who had heard every story before. I explained everything, the crash, the identification, the DNA test. She listened carefully, taking notes. I'd like to examine you, Tommy, she said. He agreed. She ran a thorough exam, noting old scars and healed fractures, checking his reflexes and examining his skull. You have clear signs of past trauma, she said. Multiple fractures, ribs, left arm, right ankle, scarring across your torso and back, and a depression in your skull consistent with a severe impact injury. From the crash? I asked. Possibly, she said. Based on what you've described and what I see, I think Tommy survived the crash but was badly injured. Head trauma, likely unconscious. In the snow and darkness, he was probably thrown from the bus and separated from the wreckage. With confusion and chaos among survivors, identifying bodies accurately would have been difficult. The person you identified, David, may have been another passenger, someone of similar build and age. Under those conditions and given your emotional state, a mistake was entirely possible. I felt sick, but she was right. So what happened next? I asked. I think someone found him, Dr. Walsh said. Maybe a passerby or someone from a nearby town, someone who didn't take him to a hospital. Perhaps they were hiding something or saw an opportunity. A young man with no memory or ID could be easily exploited. You mean someone kept him? I asked quietly. More likely used him, she replied. For labor. There are illegal operations in remote parts of BC, logging, drugs, unregistered construction. They rely on people who can't go to authorities, who don't even know who they are. Tommy stared at the floor. That would explain your memory loss, she continued. Untreated head trauma, repeated injuries, malnutrition, maybe substance exposure. Your mind shut down to protect you. The dissociative episodes you described are typical of trauma survivors. So around 2010, I said slowly, he got away or they let him go? Dr. Walsh nodded. After 15 years of labor, his health likely declined. They might have left him in Vancouver. And he lived on the streets for another 15 years, I said, my voice hollow, while I was home in Kelowna. You couldn't have known, Tommy said quietly. You thought I was gone. Dr. Walsh turned to me. David, you must understand. The man before you is your brother biologically, but he's not the same person he was at 19. He's lived through things most people couldn't survive. He's Tommy, but he's also someone new, shaped by 42 years of hardship. I looked at my brother, really looked at him. The gray in his hair, the lines on his face, the exhaustion in his eyes. She was right. This wasn't the boy I'd lost in 1983. This was a survivor. What do we do now? I asked. That's up to you, Dr. Walsh said. But Tommy will need therapy, intensive trauma counseling, identity rebuilding, and you might both benefit from family therapy to learn how to be brothers again. We left the clinic in silence. It was getting dark, and the downtown streets were filling with their usual nighttime crowd. Come home with me, I said as we stood on the sidewalk. Come to Kelowna. Stay with Sarah and me. We have a spare room. We can figure this out together. He looked at me, fear in his eyes. I don't know how to be someone's brother, he said quietly. I don't know how to be part of a family. I've been alone for too long. Then we'll learn, I said. Both of us. We'll figure it out. He hesitated, then nodded slowly. Okay, he said. Okay, David, I'll try. We drove back to Kelowna the next morning. The 7-hour trip felt different this time. I kept glancing at him, this brother who had somehow come back to life. We didn't talk much, but the silence felt peaceful. When we pulled into the driveway, Sarah was waiting on the porch. I had called her the night before, told her everything. She'd cried, then simply said, "Bring him home." When she saw him, she paused, then opened her arms. "Welcome home, Tommy," she said. He hesitated, then let her hug him. His shoulders shook, and I knew he was crying again. That was 3 months ago. It hasn't been easy. Tommy still has nightmares almost every night. He struggles with crowds, noise, and being indoors for long periods. He's seeing a therapist twice a week, working through decades of buried trauma, one step at a time. Slowly, he's remembering pieces of his past, the taste of Mom's blueberry pancakes, the name of our childhood dog, the smell of summer in our old house. Last week, he remembered a Christmas when he was 8, the year I bought him a bike. I'm starting to feel like him. He told me yesterday as we sat on the deck watching the sunset. Like Tommy. Like I'm not just someone with his DNA, but someone becoming him again, or maybe someone new who includes him. Yeah, I said. That makes sense. My kids have met him now, my 2 daughters and my son, the nieces and nephew he never knew existed. They're curious and kind. My grandson, who's 5, has already declared Tommy his best friend. Tommy smiles more when the kids are around. We've talked about what to do with the grave. His grave. There's a headstone in the Kelowna cemetery with his name on it. We've discussed whether to remove it, change it, or leave it as a memorial to the person he used to be. There's no rush to decide. Last week, Tommy got a part-time job at a garden center. He's good with plants, says they don't judge or ask questions. He comes home with dirt under his nails and quiet pride in his eyes. He's learning how to live again, and I'm learning too. I'm realizing grief doesn't follow rules. I spent 42 years mourning my brother, and now that he's back, I still grieve the person he once was, the 19-year-old who got on that bus and never came home. But I'm also grateful because against all odds, he's alive. Maybe that's what matters most. He asked me recently if I ever blamed myself for identifying the wrong body. Every day, I admitted, every single day since you called. Don't, he said. You were 23. You just lost your brother. You did what anyone would have done. And if you hadn't, they might never have found me. I could have died in those mountains. At least this way, I'm here. I'm alive. And I have a brother who drove 7 hours because a stranger said his name. He's right. I'm trying to forgive myself. It's harder than I expected. Some nights, I lie awake thinking about the years we lost, all the birthdays, holidays, and ordinary moments we should have shared. I think about Mom and how happy she would have been to know he survived. That's the hardest part, knowing she died without knowing. But then I remember what Dr. Walsh said. The past is the past. You can't change it. All you can do is move forward. So that's what we're doing, day by day, learning how to be brothers again, Or maybe learning how to be brothers for the first time, because we're both different now. Last night, we sat on the deck after dinner, and Tommy looked up at the stars. "Do you think Mom knows?" he asked. "Wherever she is, do you think she knows I'm alive?" "I think she does," I said. "I think she's been watching over you this whole time, keeping you safe until you could find your way back." He smiled, something that's still rare, but becoming more common. "I'm glad you answered the phone," he said. "Me too, Tommy," I told him. And I meant it. Despite everything, the pain, confusion, and grief that still lingers, I'm grateful. My brother came back from the dead, and that's something I never thought possible. Through all of this, I've learned that hope isn't foolish, even when it seems impossible. People are more resilient than we realize. Family isn't just shared history, it's choosing to show up every day, even when it's hard. And it's never too late for a second chance. Tommy's still rediscovering who he is. He may never remember everything. He may always carry the weight of those missing years, but he's here. He's alive. He's home. And that's enough. That's more than enough. That's everything.